this year. Welcome to Hope Road. Today we've called this press conference to address a matter of urgent national importance, and we will be having 3 speakers that will be coming to address you today. First up will be the leader of the opposition, the president of the People's National Party. Mr. Mark Woden, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. The matter of the Integrity Commission report into the statutory declarations filed by the Prime Minister and their investigation of his affairs in relation to, in particular, the offense of illicit enrichment has been of grave national concern to Jamaicans at home and abroad. The Integrity Commission, after their extensive investigation, due to a lack of information forthcoming from the Prime Minister on critical elements of facts that were relevant to the matters that they were investigating, felt it necessary to refer the matter to the Financial Investigations Division and Tax Administration Jamaica for further investigation on different aspects of what had come out in their investigations. It is therefore of critical importance that the Financial Investigations Division, which has been without a chief technical director for some time since the resignation and departure of Selvin Hay, that it be led by somebody who is competent in the kind of issues that the FID is set up to deal with as an investigative agency, and also be not tainted in any manner with any kind of political cloud over it. Whoever the technical director of the FID is, must be somebody who's not perceived as having any particular political affiliation or bias. And we feel strongly that the appointment of Dennis Chung is itself an act which will further the corruption in the country, because he is somebody who has already publicly stated positions in relation to the matters that the FID ought to be investigating, which are strongly in favor of the Prime Minister and which seek to undermine or belittle the impact and importance of the findings that the Integrity Commission has made on the matters that they investigated as set out in the report that they sent to Parliament. He has commented on the 28 bank accounts operated by the Prime Minister and his companies, on the volume of funds that have flowed through those accounts over the period of the investigation in excess of $470 million. On the issue to do with the Positive Jamaica, a non-profit foundation that receives monies for worthy causes donated from local and overseas contributors. Those funds being used to purchase financial investments in the name of and for the benefit of Mr. Holness's personal companies. On each of these matters, he publicly sought to take a position that's led to the impression that there was nothing amiss, there's no case to answer, everything is above board. Even the nil returns filed by companies that had bank accounts with hundreds of millions of dollars passing through them, he said there was nothing peculiar about that. Nil tax returns. He clearly is a biased person on this matter. He clearly would have a conflict leading the FID to investigate this matter. And that is why we're saying he should resign that position if he's accepted it, or the position should be, the appointment should be rescinded and revoked forthwith. It is too vital to Jamaica's democracy and the rule of law in our country that what will be the most important and significant investigation by the FID in its history should not be led by somebody who has taken a position on key issues that are the substance of that investigation, positions which are in favor of the Prime Minister, as opposed to positions which the FID ought to be investigating in a non-biased, non-partisan way, based on what the findings of the Integrity Commission were already on those matters. And that is why we thought it necessary to call this press conference today to state for the record that we are totally opposed to this appointment, that we feel that this appointment is itself a corrupt act because it's furthering what we believe is going to be an attempted cover-up of this matter, and that we are calling upon Jamaica to ensure that this does not go any further. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues who will go into different aspects of this in greater detail. And so I'm going to ask Julian Robinson to speak next.
Good afternoon. Jamaica has, over the many years, developed a strong reputation of having institutional integrity in terms of our anti-corruption framework. From the Integrity Commission to other institutions that have the responsibility for investigating financial crimes, both in the public and the private sector. If we look at the history of individuals who have been charged to lead, certainly the FID, we'll look at, you'll see persons who have extensive backgrounds in either law enforcement, financial crimes, anti-money laundering, etc. This is the first time that an individual, while having general accounting and management experience, would be leading the FID without specific investigative experience. And the position is Chief Technical Director. And people might say, yes, there are persons within the organization who may have the technical expertise, but this position requires someone who has that specific expertise. And it is important for us to maintain the credibility of the country's financial, the investigation of financial crimes. Putting Dennis Chung there, I believe, threatens that credibility which is not just local, but credibility which is international, because the FID is the main interface with other international organizations who cooperate with the country in investigating financial crimes. And so we see the appointment as a retrograde step, actually, and it has implications for how Jamaica would be perceived within the international community in relation to this particular matter. And so, as the opposition leader has said, the appointment should be rescinded. Mr. Chung should not accept it, because at best, the perception of bias is there, and the reality in this case, having already pronounced on a number of these issues, it is almost impossible for that reality of bias not to be seen there. And if the outcome of this investigation, which as the leader said is the most important that FID will ever undertake, absolves the Prime Minister of any wrongdoing, then it will just play into the hands of everybody who has said, you sent that person there for that particular outcome. So from our perspective as a party, beyond the individual, we see this as a threat to the institutional arrangements for the investigation of financial crimes. And it should be rescinded, and an individual who is appropriately qualified with the experience and who has no taint of political bias should be appointed to head the FID. I'll invite my colleague, Mr. Bunting, to speak further.
Thank you, Julian. Good afternoon, everyone. When I heard of this announcement yesterday afternoon, I reached out to an authority on financial crime and asked them to state the ideal qualifications and experience for the exec, and I just use it generically. This is someone who's not in Jamaica. I said, give me the ideal qualifications and experience for the executive head of a financial investigative unit that is a member of the Egmont Group. The response was that a candidate should reflect the strategic, legal, analytical, and diplomatic demands of leading a high-integrity institution charged with combating money laundering, terrorist financing, and other financial crimes. The candidate should meet international expectations for independence, competence, and credibility. With respect to academic and professional qualifications, a master's degree in law, finance, economics, criminology, accounting, public administration, or related fields was the minimum academic requirement. They then went on to say they would need specialized training in anti-money laundering or counter-terrorist financing certifications, training in forensic accounting, cybercrime, financial intelligence, or asset recovery. With regard to relevant experience, they said they should have at least 10 years experience in financial crime investigation, compliance, or intelligence gathering, with 5+ years in senior management or executive roles. Proven leadership of multidisciplinary and cross-border teams, overseeing complex case analysis, data management systems, and interagency coordination. In terms of financial crime investigation and analysis, they should have direct experience in conducting or supervising investigations into A, money laundering and related predicate offenses, B, terrorist financing, C, asset tracing and forfeiture, and D, knowledge of typologies, red flags, and financial flows relevant to organized crime, cyber-enabled crime, and corruption. In terms of legal and regulatory knowledge, familiarity with the FATF recommendations, Egmont Group standards, and domestic AML and CFT legal frameworks, and experience working with or within law enforcement, regulatory authorities, prosecutors, or financial supervisors. And then in terms of the international cooperation, they spoke to a track record of engagement with international counterparts, including FIUs, law enforcement, FATF-style regional bodies such as CFATF and the Egmont Group, and the ability to negotiate memoranda of understanding and lead international case collaboration. In terms of essential competencies, they highlighted the integrity and independence needed for the role, unimpeachable ethics, and capacity to lead an institution free from political interference, deep understanding of the secure handling of sensitive data, technological awareness, familiarity with financial intelligence systems, data analytics, and secure information exchange platforms, and so on. And then in terms of desirable attributes, not essential, but their prior role as a deputy director a director of compliance, or a chief analyst within a national financial investigative unit. So in summary, what we see is that the executive head of an FIU in the Egmont Group must combine deep technical expertise in financial crime with leadership, discretion, and an international outlook. They serve not just as an investigator in chief, but as a guardian of financial transparency and impartiality, and a partner to global financial intelligence bodies. And I invite you to look at previous chief technical directors, persons like Selvin Hay, Justin Felice, Calvin Small, all very senior detectives with distinguished careers in criminal investigations and intelligence gathering, and specifically anti-corruption and financial crimes. Or alternatively, look at Robin Sykes, former senior counsel at BOJ, point person in interacting with the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, and someone with specialized expertise in anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing, and as well as financial regulation. Ladies and gentlemen, by comparison, Dennis Chung is a weak and unsuitable candidate for this post. And when you look at the January 2025 ad for this post, you will be surprised to see that it looks like a generic management or administrative post, rather than for someone who is a chief technical director in a financial investigative unit. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that they forget that there's a short person in the room, but that's fine too. So Dennis Chung was the General Secretary for the Jamaica Football Federation. And he has now left to be appointed as the chief person at the Financial Investigative Department. Now, I just want to ask you a simple question. In his capacity, acting in football, would he have agreed with a referee who has expressed a bias for a club sharing a game in which that club is playing? The answer is clearly no. And that is what we are seeing now, where Dennis Chung has made public pronouncements in support of the Prime Minister in his investigation. Even when you are sitting on a case as a judge, if you find that you have connections with the persons before you about whom you have to adjudicate, you are required to recuse yourself. And we are simply saying to Mr. Dennis Chung today, if you had not thought about it before, you need to think about it. You should refuse this appointment. This investigation into the Prime Minister, the allegation of illicit enrichment, is indeed the most consequential matter which has happened to us since independence. Never before in the history of Jamaica have we had a Prime Minister under investigation for corruption. And today, I simply want to say this. Where are the honorable men and women in our country? Where are those men and women on whom this country has conferred national honors? Where are the professionals? Where's the private sector? Where are the church leaders? Because this will appear to you as though it is a narrow partisan political matter. It is not. It is about reaching for the very soul of our democracy. It is about the protection of our democratic institutions. Because when you corrupt an institution such as this, which as Julian and Peter have made clear, have an international reputation, when you do that, you're failing the nation and you are setting the tone for actions which undermine the institutions which must uphold our traditions and which must reflect who we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, a few years ago, this issue surrounding the reports on the Integrity Commission came to public attention. And initially, we were told that persons are unaware of the individuals who are under investigation. At a press conference that was held at Jamaica House, when a journalist put the question to the Prime Minister as to whether or not he is aware as to why he has not been certified, he said he had no idea why, and he was anxious to be certified. When we eventually saw the report of the investigation into his affairs, we realized that at the time when he made that statement, it was not true, because prior to that, he was written to, and that they had a meeting with him at OPM and his lawyers and explained to him that there is a possibility that he has assets that are out of keeping with his lawful income, what we term illicit enrichment. We saw where the Prime Minister took the matter to court, and he was asking he was trying to mandate the courts to sign off on his report. We saw where Mr. Chung came out and gave his opinion on the matter. It's free to have an opinion on the matter, but by any means, by the acceptable standard as to what the average person would think, an individual that has already come to a conclusion on the matter, to be now placed in charge of the body to investigate the matter, is highly inappropriate. And anyone who cannot see that as inappropriate, then that begs a lot of questions. The gentleman in question also created a firestorm in Jamaica a few months ago when he said that Usain Bolt money did not get to SSL. And it is the same FID that needs to look into the issues surrounding SSL. I, as a Jamaican and a well-thinking Jamaican, I am very concerned about the path that we are on as a country. I am a proud Jamaican, but I am ashamed of my government. I am ashamed of this JLP government because they are eroding what we have come to accept as Jamaica. They are destroying the institutions that give us a good, credible reputation internationally. Corruption is rampant. It is almost palpable in the society, and we will not accept it. The time has come. Enough is enough. The people of Jamaica need to be given an opportunity to decide if they want to continue with this level of corruption in high places, or if they want to return decency to Jamaica House. And as of such, we are giving this government 72 hours to rescind this appointment. And if they do not rescind it, there will be actions all over Jamaica. Thank you. The floor is open for your questions. I'm not going to tell you the action, so you can go to the previous slide. Okay, that's fine.
How far is the People's National Party prepared to go if the appointment is not rescinded? And is there a legal avenue that can be pursued?
In terms of a legal angle, that's something that we're considering. We haven't had time yet to definitively come to a position on that. But certainly it's something we are exploring. And in terms of actions on the ground, you will see in due course what we have in mind. If the government decides to pursue this and continue on this path, which is essentially contaminating the Financial Investigations Division, which is the institution in Jamaica that is internationally the liaison when it comes to anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing, and fighting financial crimes generally. Mr. Chung has stated publicly positions on the matter, the most important matter that the FID will ever have had to investigate. Positions which have prejudged the matter and indicate that as far as he's concerned, there's nothing to investigate. It's all kosher. It's all above board. Somebody who has done that publicly cannot properly be appointed to run that agency tasked with investigating that matter. It would run a coach and horses through Jamaica's anti-corruption framework and undermine the rule of law and the reputation of our country. That's why we're taking it very seriously. And you'll be hearing more from us if the government doesn't do the right thing, or indeed if Dennis himself doesn't do the right thing and step away from this appointment.
We recognize Siobhan Campbell from Nationwide. Please unmute and go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Go, Siobhan. Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. My question is to Mr. Golding. The appointment of Dennis Chung was done through the Office of the Services Commission, which is led by Mrs. Patricia Sinclair McCalla, along with Bishop the Honorable Harold Blair, Professor Denise Eldemeyer Scherer, and Miss Kadria Folks. These are the appointees to the Public Service Commission that you yourself signed off on just last year. Are you suggesting that these individuals did not take much of what you said into consideration and did not go down the right path when they selected Mr. Chung as their final appointment?
Thank you. I'm saying that, first of all, the ad which was developed was inappropriate in that it did not cover the critical elements of what the Chief Technical Director of Jamaica's FID ought to cover. The competencies and experience that are required for the job were not clearly enunciated in the ad that was formulated and published. And I think that they have gone down the wrong path and chosen somebody who is manifestly inappropriate for this position. I don't know on what basis they thought otherwise. I don't think that they sufficiently informed themselves as to what Mr. Chung had done and said in relation to this matter, because I cannot believe that had they been thorough in looking at this issue and seeing what his pronouncements had been publicly on the matter, that they would have recommended it.
We recognize Jeffrey Tavares from Equitalk Media. Please unmute and go ahead with your question. Tavares? Okay, we take.
Mr. Golding, I just wanted to go a little bit further with your response. The appointment was done by the Services Commission. and it was advertised and the process followed. What about it you would be taking issue with if there's given that you have said that you are reviewing some the legal issues around it? What about it are you looking at from a legal standpoint?
As has been shown in relation to the drill, the $31.5 million drill, processes can be followed in a manner that achieves an anomalous and outrageous result. And if you look at the result and you move back from the result, you can see that the process was flawed. And as I said before, I cannot believe that they had before them the material that is generally known to anyone who follows these matters carefully, and yet still assume or make the recommendation of this individual for that task. So they have failed to take into account relevant factors in making their recommendation. And that can be a basis for legal challenge.
We have a follow-up from Siobhan Campbell from Nationwide. Go ahead, Siobhan.
Yes. Yes, again, this matter in relation to Mr. Chung's appointment, you and Mr. Bunting have pointed to his unsuitability for the role, and this is my words to suggest that it's tantamount to a corrupt act, his appointment. But was it not the previous PNP administration that appointed Mr. Chung as chairman of the NSWMA and credited him with the turnaround of that organization? Plus, Mr. Chung has several board appointments, both in the financial sector and elsewhere, which would have reached the standard you would expect of someone with enough ability and understanding of the financial matters in relation to the FID that the appointment could be considered kosher. And that question is directed to either you or Mr. Bunting, Mr. Golding.
Well, we can both have respond to it, but my response is this. Mr. Chung has experience and competencies in areas which would make him an appropriate choice for positions where he doesn't have a clear issue of bias and conflict of interest. And that's the crux of this matter. He has, by his public pronouncements, exhibited a strong position on this matter, which is in favor of the person who's under investigation. And he's now being appointed to lead the agency tasked with doing that investigation. That is absolutely untenable and wrong. And it is a corrupt outcome because it undermines the transparency and fairness of the process to have somebody who's leading the agency being somebody who has already indicated a position of bias in relation to the matter. His prior appointments in the private and public sector are irrelevant because these factors weren't at play. And therefore, I don't think that the question has any weight.
And if I could just add, you're really not comparing apples with apples. Someone who is chairing a board or is a director on a board, the requirements of their technical training is completely different from somebody who is the executive leader of an investigative agency. A board member just has to operate at the level of corporate governance principles, have a general understanding of management and corporate responsibilities, etc. The chief technical director of an investigative unit must come to the table with extensive experience in dealing with complex financial investigations, coordinating with international intelligence agencies, having some specialized training and experience in that area. This is not a board member who is going to sit at a governance level. This is the person that is going to day-to-day run the organization and supervise criminal investigations. If he had come from the DPP's department with specialized prosecutorial experience, that would have been something different. If he had come out of law enforcement, which is typically where someone like this would come from, and if not from law enforcement, then from a regulated financial regulation. If you had come from any of those areas with 10 years experience or 5 years leadership experience, then it would be completely different. To compare appointing someone as the chairman of the board of NSWMA is really ludicrous. And I'm actually disappointed that anybody would even suggest that that's a relevant comparison.
Mr. Moderator.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Campbell, we have two more questions. I'm being informed. Please go ahead. Unmute and go ahead with your question. Mr. Tavares.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My question is, Dr. Dayton Campbell said something a while ago that there'll be, in my words, that there'll be, in other words, there'll be pandemonium in Jamaica if he doesn't step down. What are you trying to say, sir? Will there be a demonstration put on by the People's National Party if he doesn't step down? That's the question.
Mr. Tavares, I do not have that word in my vocabulary. I said no such thing. The point I'm making, and I'm being very strident to the point that I'm making, is that we are taking back our country from the clutches of despair. We're taking back our country from those who have taken us down a path that we have become unrecognizable as to who we are, what we stand for, the value systems that we have. No time in the People's National Party could we have a leader of the party who is under investigation and continues to remain as the leader of the party. It could not happen. For you to have a prime minister that is seeking to strike down the very law that defines illicit enrichment, it could not happen, and it should not be happening in Jamaica. And then, if you did not hear what Senator Scott Motley said, Mr. Chung is the General Secretary of Jamaica Football Federation. Just imagine that he's at a match in the Royal Box, in his Jamaican colors. Seated beside him is somebody in red and black from Trinidad, cheering for Trinidad. And then after the first half has ended, and the person is there defending how well Trinidad is playing, the person takes off the Trinidad jersey and goes on the field to referee the match. Who would agree to that? Nobody would. We think that this is highly inappropriate. We will not stand for it. And if they do not act, we are going to act. And the people of this country, time has come for them to act. The Prime Minister is hiding and doing all sorts of other things. Might as well call the election and let the people decide if they want to continue with this level of corruption in high places.
We take the final question from Siobhan Campbell.
Yes, good afternoon again. This is not related directly to the matter, but I understand, and this is some news coming into me. Are you aware of a raid by the Revenue Protection Division at the 14th North Avenue building that houses the PNP Central Kingston constituency office, where approximately 20 boxes of bleaching cream were found? We are told that Mr. McGregor, your candidate, was present when the RPD visited and seized the items. Has he briefed the Secretariat or the leadership of the party?
I have no knowledge of that. If you do have knowledge of that, you need to share your information with the police. I find it very strange, the things that I see going around, the disinformation that I see going around, and some of it is coming even out of your own station. And I am very disappointed with it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us here today. This is a very important matter. I think it goes to the heart of the democracy of the country, of who we are as a people. We are a proud people, and we want to ensure that we can recognize our country, and we want to leave our country in a way that is better than we found it, that our children can live and grow and be prosperous. Thank you very much. Have a good day.